Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the public virtual meeting for the Gibsonton Community Character Profile. I am Marianne Abrahamson with the Planning Commission. The presentation this evening will provide a summary of the community profile with a following Q&A with the attendees of tonight's meeting and the project team, including Bob Gray with Strategic Planning Group, who is here with me as well. Before we begin, we'd like to mention that we strongly encourage your participation, and we will address each of your comments and questions immediately following the presentation. This presentation will be recorded. If you should need to leave the presentation for any reason or would like to review the presentation again at a later time, we will post the full recording of this virtual public meeting on the Gibsonton project webpage. Because we want to give everyone who wants to comment the opportunity to do so, we ask that you limit your questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. Members of the public may ask questions by typing them into the questions box and submit comments by typing them into the chat box at any time during the meeting. Additionally, members of the public may also choose to speak. If you wish to speak, please click the raise hand button. Your name will be read and you will be unmuted when you are recognized to speak. And once your allocated time for public comment has ended, you will be muted again. If you'd like to make a comment but are having technical difficulties, please call 813-273-3774, extension 323. I'll say that one more time. It is 813-273-3774, extension 323. And again, questions will be answered at the conclusion of tonight's presentation. If there are any questions we do not have an immediate answer to, or if at the end of our 90-minute meeting questions still remain, we'll follow up with an answer by email within a few days. All questions and comments will be compiled and published on the Gibsonton project webpage. And I will now turn it over to our presenter, Bob Gray, with Strategic Planning Group.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm going to bring up the presentation. What we're going to do is we're going to go over the draft profile summary, but before I start, I just wanted to take time to thank the over 100 stakeholders who provided input into this draft plan. To start with, basically, what is the community plan? Its purpose is to really bring the data up to date as best we can to have an understanding of not only the market and economic, but basically the entire environmental and socioeconomic community of Gibson. It's important to know what it's not. It's not a change to the adopted Gibson community plan, and it will not change community land use or zoning. And again, these are things that could happen in the future, but this is basically providing background information and bringing it up to date for future efforts. The study area, basically the map you see to the right shows the boundary areas of Gibson. I do want to stress that toward the center bottom, you'll see coming off a big bend road, that the boundaries actually jut up and do not go all the way to the US 41 corridor. That's going to be important. We'll be discussing that in a little bit. But the map also shows not only the entire community, but we're focused on the three major, actually 4 corridor or study areas. At the very top, we have the Alafaya River corridor. We have directly below that the Gibsonton Drive corridor, and then to the center of that map in the green is the US 41 corridor. So those were looked at individually with respect to build out potential. We started off the program really back in January, where we started on the 27th with interviewing stakeholders. And then we held a community workshop on the 28th, and I believe we had over 60 people attend that workshop. And then we also had internet online surveys for what we call the SWOT, Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunity, and Threats survey on through the month of February. So we have basically 2 sets of heavy input. One was from the community workshop, and the other came from online survey inputs. when we looked at the community workshop itself, one of the things we asked was, how would you describe Gibsonton in one word? And this listing you see in front of you shows basically what everybody said in the community wording themselves. So the number 1 and 2 was basically people felt that it's a historic community and that it really relies heavily on the show business people and the carnies, as they call it, quote unquote. But it's also overcrowded, underserved. People said it was messy and trashy, forgotten in time, etc. And I thought the last one was interesting. It's in transition. But these are basically, I think, the initial feeling of what people in the community felt about your community. We then did this strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. And on the slide, you'll see 2 sets of data. On the left side is the data that came from the interview and the community workshop. And on the right are the separate inputs that came in from the online survey. As you can see, they're somewhat similar. And we actually had more comments, coming in from the internet. But basically, it shows that the strengths were the show people, location, and in terms of the internet, we started picking up on the natural resources and the like. But again, I think you can see that there is a similarity with far more grouping in the community side than it was on the internet and the strength. But the strengths, again, are location, the fact that it's growing, it has the natural resources, its history, and the carnies, if you will, and basically the small rural town feel. Well, what were the weaknesses? Overwhelmingly on both sides, the weaknesses were perceived as the roads, the traffic, the density, poor planning, drugs, gangs, crime. Traffic is a little bit separate. The roads dealt with the condition of the roads. The traffic is the congestion side, the like, blight enforcement, all this on the community side. And on the internet side, it was the same thing. It's the road traffic, drugs, blighted, lack of retail and groceries. The homeless came in on both sides. And then definitely the lack of water and sewer infrastructure was again on both sides. Well, what were the opportunities? The opportunities we asked basically to look out 10 years. And in that 10-year period, if things came to fruition of what people wanted the community to be, what would happen? What would have happened? Well, the community said basically the roads would be upgraded along with the water and sewer. There'd be more street lights and sidewalks. There would have been a crackdown on the drugs. It would have been more of a tourism center with show people and more destination tourism. And again, better code enforcement, better looking neighborhoods, developers paying more of their fair share specifically for infrastructure, and then slowing down the growth and forcing the master plan. The internet, again, similar. As you can see, the overwhelming one was the road improvements by far. Success in redevelopment had occurred, reduction in the crime and drugs, and again, more infrastructure capability. So again, both sides were consistent. Again, the internet, I think, was a little bit more heavily oriented toward the road improvement. And the threats, again, the community side was that loss of hometown atmosphere was the largest single element. Lack of representation, and again, that really meant back into the planning in the political light, infrastructure, crime rates, and again, furthermore, that the lack of county support, again, related probably toward more of the infrastructure and the like. On the other side of the coin, at the internet, again, the overwhelming thing was crime and drugs, roads and traffic, and again, overcrowding, overcrowding was being basically reflecting the new construction of homes within the area and infrastructure. So it's the mirror image, again, of what the weaknesses were. Well, one of the purposes of the study was also to look at data. So we wanted to basically see where you were as a community today, and we wanted to compare it with the county. And the ones in yellow basically are some of the ones that I just wanted to highlight. The median age of Gibsonton is significantly lower than the county, 33 versus 37. That's reflected in having far more kids under 5, as you can see, and more school-age kids from 16.9 versus 12.3. And conversely, at the other end of the stream, less seniors, only 9.3 versus 15%. And again, there was slightly more Hispanic population in terms of percentage, 34 versus 30 within the county. In terms of housing inventory, basically coming from the 2017 census data, which at the time was the latest we had from census, basically showed 6,100 housing units. And again, I think the important thing there is under mobile and other. Of that 6,100 units, almost 2,100 units are mobile homes, and I'll touch on that in a second. 9.7 are vacant, and some of those would be defined by the census as seasonal, and those would be along the waterfront. And again, predominantly a owner-occupied situation with 60%, 63% owner and 37% renter. And the average size of the households are roughly 3.3 persons per household. And this basically focuses on what we were talking about. We hardly have any mobile home or multifamily, which are apartments predominantly, compared really to the county. But we have significantly more mobile homes. Again, that's 34% versus 7% for the county. And that reflects basically down at the bottom where the median house value is 150, well, almost 151,000 for the community versus almost 180,000 for the county as a whole. Again, this basically is showing where we think the projections are going. This is based on a proprietary model provided by a firm called ESRI, E-S-R-I. And basically, if we look at 2019 as the base year and push out 5 years, we're seeing a gain of a population of about almost 2,200 and households of almost 672 new units. So that's basically what 1,200, 120 units per year projecting out. And at the very bottom, you can see basically what we're showing is that in all cases, with the exception being families a little bit, we expect, or they project anyway, population, households, and families to be significantly higher growth rates than the state and the county, again, with the exception of families on the county side. An important thing within any profile is the educational trends within the community, because they are so important with attracting, again, development, new development, and higher quality development into a community. And again, the yellow shows a significant difference between the community and the county. Almost 20% of Gibson has less than a high school education compared to roughly 12% at the county. And again, if we look at the extreme side, which is the most important in terms of economic development, you only have about 17% with a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to 32% for the county. And again, this is important, and it's a factor that we in the site selection business really look at when we look at community. One of the significant things, and I think everybody within the community realizes when we presented some of this data, is that in terms of the entire workforce that actually works within the community, the residents of the community, 7,437 actually leave Gibsonton to go to work. 1,629 come from outside of Gibson into Gibson to work, and only 208 actually live and work within. And this is based upon census data that was done in 2017, and I would assume that it's probably still the same percentages if we were to try to do it today, but those data are not available. The employment analysis, and again, this slide unfortunately cut off the very top. The second column where it says number at the very top is the number of actual businesses, and the percentage follows. To the right of that is another number, and that's the number of actual jobs and the percent. And as you can see, in terms of the businesses themselves, retail trade is the largest with 59 businesses. It represents 20% of all. Construction has 30 businesses, which represents 10%. Overall, Gibsonton has an estimated 295 businesses within its boundaries. In terms of jobs, though, the retail trade, again, still is the largest with 585 jobs. But then you find administrative support, waste management, and remediation there with 572, which also represents about 26%. So basically, when we look at that, we basically say that there's 295 businesses and there's 2,773 jobs within Gibsonton as of 2019. One of the things we wanted to do is to basically highlight and look where the industrial areas are. And this map, it's hard to read a little bit, but you'll see on the right side, you'll see designations very tiny. And this shows actually where industrial buildings are. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, our boundary does not include the intersection of Big Bend and US 41. And in terms of industrial square feet, when we look at those statistics, they're collected not by the exact city or the community boundaries. They actually go down to that area that we have that is not part of the actual community itself. So basically, overall, it's 1.7 million square feet, of which 82% is occupied. So that's very, very good. A majority of that, though, is actually falling within that interchange or that intersection between US 1 and Big Bend Road, just north of that in those industrial complexes. But what it does show us is that the area itself is very, very viable for industrial development. Next, we looked at basically the same thing, but this time from where existing offices were. And one of the things we again found out, you can see again the footprints of where the buildings are and what type they are. And we basically had no Class A offices within the community itself. And that's again important because Class A is basically where people are going to come in to occupy spaces. Class A basically means it's got the newest features in terms of layout, building, and appearance. So again, from an existing office capability, Gibsonton community itself is somewhat lacking. And again, what we showed there was no Class A. We have 8 Class B offices, 7 C. C basically in this context is not good, for a total of 65,000 square feet. But on the other side of the coin is, except for one of the properties, everything is 100% leased. The traditional stuff was built in the 60s, but as we've seen along Gibsonton Drive, we've saw a lot of new construction in the 2019, actually late 2018, 2019 time period. And most of that, as we know, is retail development. One of the things that we look at when we study communities is what is the difference between what the community demands in terms of what their spending potential is within the community itself and what the stores themselves sell. So that if you look at the very top there, that motor vehicle parts 441, there is a demand within Gibsonton for $31 million worth of sales, but there's only roughly 10 million sales that are currently being done by Gibsonton businesses, which means there's a positive gap of $21 million available And again, off to the far right, there are only 11 businesses that fall within there. So basically what we're saying there, that is a very positive gap. That's a positive thing that says, hey, there's more demand than there are sales or stores. So there's an attraction, could be for additional stores. And again, if you see down on building material and garden supply, it's basically, it's close, but it's a negative gap, meaning that they're somewhat in equilibrium. And then in food and beverage, again, we're picking up a very positive gap, which means there is a existing demand for more food and beverage, which again was one of the desires that came out of the SWOT analysis. You have plenty of gas stations, so basically that's why that shows a negative 26 million. And again, that's reflecting somewhat the intersections at the I-75 interchanges. And again, you also have general merchandise stores, again, is a negative 39, almost 40 million. And again, that reflects, again, the retail stores that have recently been opening up on Gibsonton Drive. And again, basically, we're showing that at the time was only 5 major stores. And again, we're picking up food and drink places, which was again a weakness that was picked up in the SWOT itself, with only roughly currently 11 businesses falling within that category. This is just a graphic of what I've just said, and everything to the left basically shows that you have more than enough of, i.e. gas stations, you'll see there in general merchandise store. And to the right, it's where there is actually an ability to attract new stores. And you can see all the way through. And I'm going to go now to not this 3-digit, which is a fancy way of grouping things. I'm going to go down to more detail. And you can see again on this slide, the availability again, where there is enough existing stores, which is to the left, and to the right, all the ones that do show potential for new store development or new demand. The Planning Council defines each of the communities throughout Hillsborough County as a category of communities in concern, areas within these communities. And these are basically areas that have 2 or more characteristics, and those characteristics can be disabilities, limited English proficiency, racial minority, low-income groups. So using those categories, these are where the designation, which is basically where the people live within the community. So it shows the areas that are considered communities of concern by the Planning Commission. Now, one of the things we wanted to do in this study was to look also at a lot of environmental data. So you'll see, I'm going to present a lot of maps here, but it's just to show that the report, we do show where things are. Again, this map shows where the coastal high hazard areas are currently. And again, we do know, quite honestly, from everybody's talk and stuff, as you'll see throughout these things, that there are a lot of natural resource limitations or assets, depending upon how you look at them, within the community. This shows the flood zone areas. Again, a significant portion of the, both on the west side and on the other side of I-75 along the river basins show the capability or the need or the, again, constraint by being within the flood zones. The slashed areas you see there are basically the water areas of the rivers. And again, this map, it's hard to read, but again, it's in the reports. But this shows the existing wetlands. And again, as you would overlay all these, you can see that they're all related to one another as it deals with the water and the floodwater conditions. And again, to the south there, you can see the preserve areas, and this is wildlife habitat. Again, on the one side, these are significant natural resources. On the development side, there are areas that will not be developed. We also look, because of the issue of traffic and road condition stuff, we wanted to look at what the existing connectivity is, and again, in terms of capability of bus and others. And this shows, again, the bus routes existing throughout in the red, if you will. That's existing. These are the existing transit routes and where the stops are. And as we can see, it's almost predominantly located along 41 and Gibsonton Drive. And again, we now project over the near-term future connectivity, and it's basically strengthening the existing one. As we can see in the center area, just below the center area, you'll see the purple, which is showing future, again, development to help improve the connectivity throughout the community. So again, the purple is basically showing the new stuff that's coming in and it has been committed. Parks, again, are an important part of a community, and this shows the existing parks within Gibsonton, including the preservation area in that southern portion. As I mentioned, schools were important, education is important. The school system has improved, as you can see over on the 3 schools that are located within the community. I would say that C is sort of the bottom of acceptable ranges in terms of economic development. We would love to see those starting to be in the B and higher ranges. But again, that has shown improvement from the D to the C's. Okay, I'm not going to try to go over these, but again, we heard heavily in the SWOT analysis the need for improvements to roads and to ease the traffic congestion and infrastructure. And this basically shows the location and listing of $153 million worth of capital improvements that are scheduled to be done within the community, the majority of which are infrastructure and road improvements. This map basically shows, it does show the existing land use as a map and what is the existing uses of land within the Gibsonton community. One of the things that becomes very, very clear is that blue area, which is the public, quasi-public, or another way of looking at it, there are a lot of areas that are developed or will not be developed. And I'll hit on that when I look at the vacant land in a second. But this shows where the land uses and the types of land uses are today. And again, the light yellow is basically the single family homes throughout. One of the things, as we want to look into the future, we wanted to know how much developable land is there that is developable today. In other words, that does not have development on it. And those really are 2 categories. It's vacant land itself, which is only 924 acres or 13% of the total acreage, and 456 agriculture, which could be rolled over into development. So basically, we're just slightly less than 20% available for development without knocking down existing developments. It also shows, again, that single family and mobile homes represent 26% or 1,800 acres of the overall development within the community. The map to the left, I want to highlight it again. The blue shows where the developable vacant property is. And by that, I mean both vacant and agricultural possibilities. So that is the areas that one could envision potential development occurring. The other side of that is what could be given existing zoning. And again, this map is very complicated. It is in the report. It would be easier to see. But this shows what the existing zoning of all parcels within the community were as of 2019. We also wanted to look at population density, and population density is basically looking at traffic area zones that are done by the county, the acreage within them, and then projected population within that acreage, and that gives you density. And as we can see, the density for Gibsonton is basically right around the Gibsonton Drive and Nundy Avenue area. And again, on the east side of I-75, you can see again along the eastern border. So this basically shows where the county's overall projections for 2013 show population gains. And again, this is just a reflection of where those numbers have come from. And it basically shows that by 2030, which is really sort of the horizon we looked at, the county had projected roughly 23,000 population, and then going on out and an increase in growth, if you really looked, up to 24,600. So basically modest growth, but there is growth projected. And again, the future land use, we looked at basically the areas, and this shows the types of usages and the potential for development. And again, on the bottom part of that, you'll see a matrix or a table. And basically what we looked at was what was the build out potential on these land uses and the type. And I can barely read it myself, so let me pull up something real quick here. And I apologize. I can give you the actual numbers. If we look at the potential for the future land use, if it were totally built out as the map and the future land use would allow, it allows for a residential density of, hang on. I'm going to have to come back. It's not totaled on that. I'll come back and give the total population capabilities, but it provides for a significant increase in both residential units and population and an extremely large amount of non-retail or non-residential. What we then did, more importantly, is to look at each of the corridors which we were focusing on. This is the build out, sorry, the analysis of the future land use capabilities. And basically it shows that if you built out what the future land use allowed, you could accommodate approximately 69,000 people or 23,000 dwelling units. And on the other side of the coin, you had the potential of over 51, almost 52 million square feet. That's not going to occur. It's just saying that if it developed to what could occur by, again, future land use designations, it just cannot occur because of a lot of reasons. One, market demand capability is not there, and the types of land uses such as the environmental preserved areas and the like. But this is just quantifying a what if. We did again the same thing for the Alafaya River corridor itself. And again, in the hashed marks you'll see on that map there, those are areas that are vacant. Again, vacant, either vacant or agricultural capabilities. And basically it shows the, again, total build out capability of all in terms of residential DUIs, and again, the acreage maximum square feet of non-residential, which places it basically at a little over 3.6 million square feet. And again, all this is along the river. The build out on the 41 corridor itself is shown here. Again, because the length of it, it's difficult to look. But again, hashed areas you can see are those that are vacant by definition. And we basically look at the residential capability, which is very light, because most of this is in terms of future land use, is designated as commercial and office. We've done the same thing for Gibsonton. Again, the hashed marks are where there is either vacant or agricultural capability. And again, Gibsonton Drive is really the center core of the future growth, I think, of the community. And again, it shows again the capability of over 3.5 million square feet of non-residential, and again, a significant increase in residential development. Again, most of that development has the capability of being a bit higher density than is currently there if one were to redevelop some of those properties. The last one we looked at in terms of the different corridors or districts, we looked at the show business overlay. Now, the entire area, the entire community falls within this overlay. So it basically says you could develop, again, in parcel by parcel, get the designation for the RSB. The map cuts off a little bit of the very top. As we know, the northern part of Alpha is heavily, again, showbiz oriented, but the center part was what we were focusing on, are the parcels that currently have the show business overlay district itself designations. And again, if it's hashed and nothing's on it, it basically means they're totally vacant. If it's got the yellow on it, it shows what the existing land use designations are. So with that in mind, that sort of concludes a lot of detail of information that is available to anybody that wants to look at it. But what does it basically mean to us as the consultant looking? You have a very, very good historic community that needs improvements, a lot of it being infrastructure to move to the next level. Because of your location within the county, even though you have good access to I-75, I doubt in terms of the near-term future, you're going to see a significant demand occur for non-residential properties, the exception being perhaps industrial. So Mary Ann?
Great, thank you. So yeah, we know that was a lot of information to process at one time. So if you care to look at the maps a little bit closer or read the full report as it stands now, that is available on the Gibsonton webpage. So you can zoom in and spend as much time as you'd like with that. And if you'd like to look that over and digest it a little bit more, you can send any questions you have after that to me. And my email is here, maryanna@plancom.org. So I see that we have a couple of questions rolling in. So I will throw it to Jay Collins, who will be reading out the questions that have come in.
Good evening, everybody. So Jay Collins, Planning Commission staff, and the first question that we do have here is, when you stated that Gibsonton Drive is the center for future growth, what does that mean for future planning?
You want me to answer that? Or?
Yeah, Bob, if you want to take a shot at that with the idea of the market research and what you feel as the conversation that you had with the community.
Well, the reason I was saying the way it is in terms of the capability of the infrastructure, there's more available infrastructure existing within the Gibsonton Drive corridor itself, as witnessed by the development we're seeing over by the interchange. And again, because of the amount of development, you have the Walmart, the movie theater, and some retail developments and food establishment. These developments are attracting the greater region. They're not just satisfying the demand of Gibsonton residents itself, so they're pulling people into that corridor. So basically, from a market analysis, that's the first area we think that can see an increase in terms of density and development should the numbers work. And again, as we move further to the west, we need more infrastructure along US 41 before we're going to see, significant development back over in that area.
All right, I have another question here. Within the gap analysis, the health and personal care stores are 0. How can we encourage health care and personal care to come to Gibsonton?
A lot of that market, unfortunately, is being satisfied outside the area. I think you'll get more as you have higher income growth, and I don't mean upper end totally, but just higher family income coming into the area where you can get the need for doctor care, dentist, and the like. But right now, you don't have the facilities for it. As we mentioned, there's no Class A office in existence. So basically, it's a hard one to do in the short term. I think in the longer term, as Gibsonton Drive develops more, there is a greater probability of that occurring because that area can service the greater region.
I have another question here. It states, after all this information and strong need to improve infrastructure as a critical need, what are the county's immediate for the next 2 or 3 year initiatives? And I would say on my side, and then Bob, you may have something that you could think of. One thing obviously is the county has its CIP, so it's showing some infrastructure improvements that will come here. And then Bob, it might be on your end of whether or not you think the county is programming the right things for the community, perhaps.
Let me hit my part first. Mm-hmm. I think the stuff that I saw when we looked at your capital improvement plan, as it relates to the community itself, it had significant dollars to start that improvement that would affect, I think, the 3 most critical areas. One was road improvements. One dealt with transportation improvements, the lights, et cetera, and the improvements to basic infrastructure. And what I mean by that is the water and sewer. I think those are the most critical things to be done and continue to be done into the near-term future to allow a footprint for the market to respond and develop.
I do have some others. Marianne, was there anybody that had a hand raised who would like to speak, or shall I just keep going with reading of questions?
Yes, we have one person with their hand raised, Miss Kathy Parsons. Miss Parsons, your line is open.
You showed the map of the showbiz overlay. Why was not the RSB zoning including in that? We had RSB zoning before we were forced to have the show business overlay, because on Gibsonton Drive there is numerous RSB zonings.
Mm-hmm. The entire community is within the overlay zoning. What we showed are the parcels that actually have the zoning at the parcel level. The only problem with that map, and I need to look back at it, is we're not showing the northern part on it, but we have basically all the parcels that have that zoning designation, and whether there's development on it or it's vacant but has that designation.
Mm-hmm. Kathy, are you thinking that that your property is excluded, or that the map is incorrect?
Yes, I think we need to include the RSB because that was here first, And then we were shoved down our throats with the show business overlay, which was not what we wanted. We had the RSB, but the county decided we needed show business overlay. They are almost one and the same. One stays with the property, the other one does not when you sell it.
Got it. Okay, so we can take a look at that zoning layer some more and maybe pull the RSB zoning layer from before the overlay was in place.
Well, if you include both of them, you would see there's more show business, because when you looked at the show business overlay, it looks like there's not many. But when you drive around town, there's a lot of show people who are stuck here because of the virus, that you can see everything in their yard that's not on. My property is not on the map because I have RSB. I don't have the overlay.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you, Kathy. We'll certainly look at that, and I'll follow up with you as well separately in an email too. Was there anything else, Kathy, before you go?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I don't see any other hands raised at this time. But there are some other questions that have come in. If Jay, you'd like to pick it up where you left off.
Sure. So the next question I've got lined up here is about Class A office. So knowing that we are missing Class A business locations, what will the Commissioner's office do to focus on our needs? So I don't know, Bob, from your experiences in other communities, what can government do to help bring in Class A office space?
For Gibsonton, I think would be the improvement of the infrastructure, especially along Gibsonton Drive. That's about all you can really do, because again, office follows what we call rooftops, which basically means you've got to have the population within the area. You don't within Gibson per se, but the Gibsonton Drive area, especially to the east, is drawing into the more populated areas of South Hillsborough County. So again, I think that's the area for potential. But again, I think in terms of traffic improvement and infrastructure improvement, probably has to occur a little bit more before you'll find demand for that.
The next question I have is specific to sewer, and we can actually find out if there is a CIP program or if there's anything specifically for some of the sewer. The question is, do you have plans to bring sewer line to the Richmond Street in the future? And again, this is a fact-finding report. So what we're doing is we're providing the community with the factual information of what's going on in their community. So we can certainly find out for you if that is something that is programmed now by the county. We'll reach out for you on that. And again, the next question I have here also talks about sewage. I'll read it out. The majority of the area doesn't have county sewage, and too many septic tanks are closer to the water. This is something the county should take as an immediate action item. Again, Bob, are you familiar with any kind of programs with septic systems and the removal of septic systems, or anything else that other governments might have done?
I can't name the exact programs, but I know the state government, Natural Resources, is definitely doing. That's a statewide move to improve and to remove septic tanks, especially in areas such as Gibsonton that has the high flood hazard areas and the like. But there are some grants, but I can't really respond to what Hillsborough County program is in terms of, but it will have one in terms of removing septic tank.
And we had the question asked for how many people are online, and not counting staff, there are 20 people that we saw at the height of the attendee list. Currently, there are 17 attendees that are on. I think that's correct. We'll have to check to make sure, but I believe at the height, the attendee list was 20. Terry, are there any other hands up or should I keep going?
There are no other hands up. You can continue.
Okay. So the next one is, how will this fact-finding report be used by the county to create future plans? And that's a good question, and I can add a few points here, and then Bob, if you have anything to add to it. This travels with your community plan. So basically what this does is it, as an addendum to your plan, it will update some of that data and analysis. So when the county is making decisions for your community, or when you are advocating to the county commission for things that are happening in your community, this is a document that you can use to help prove your point one way or the other. And we also believe, and Bob might be able to speak better to this, about the gap analysis and the retail analysis and how this may be used to actually bring businesses into your community.
Jay, with respect to that last question, you have an economic development arm within the county that looks at these things, and while they provided some of the data that we actually used in the analysis, the fact that we now have it as a package program for them, I think it gives them data that they can now have that they didn't have in that format in target areas. So hopefully that will help.
So it looks like one individual answered some of our sewage questions. Says yes on sewer. Commissioner Merman is starting in Gibsonton in the next 2 years, septic to sewer conversion. So that's good. And again, we will reach out to the Public Utilities Department and find out a little bit more information to make sure that we have all the correct information for you guys. And again, since these questions and some of the answers will be available online, we'll have that information for you there at the project webpage. So another question I have here is, what resources are possible, being that Gibsonton is a lower socioeconomic community, through the county resources? And Bob, I think you just spoke a little bit about some of that right there, and that there's a cheerleader in the Economic Development Department to help with some of these issues.
Well, not only that, but within the Planning Commission itself, the area has been designated as a community of concern, and that reflects back into community what I would call social programs and alike. It puts them ahead of other areas because of that designation, so that should help.
Bear with me here. Commissioner Merman has also stated that an increase of light along Gibsonton Drive will also be coming. Now, that's just another statement, which I believe is something that we did hear from the community on their infrastructure issues, that pedestrian issues, that they wanted to make sure that they had good lighting to get around, and also with some of the issues of crime.
Lighting and sidewalks.
Yes. Another question is, what kind of plans and incentives do the Gibsonton residents have for economic development activities? You know, and again, this may be one of the things that what we need to do is go ahead and provide some of the contact information for the Economic Development Department of Hillsborough County on our website. And that might be helpful for some of the residents to see what kind of programs the county does have available. There are certain grants and other things that the county has available for certain businesses, so that might be helpful. So this is who do we talk to regarding being a community of concern? Who can we contact to champion our needs? Well, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, organizes that data. So I would believe that probably somebody within the MPO might be able to speak to that. I do know that Mr. Wade Reynolds was on the call earlier. I don't know if he is still here. He might be able to discuss that.
Thank you, Jay. I'm still here. Certainly, anyone can contact the MPO. Those designations are done based on demographic data, which is through the census. But that program is typically used to prioritize transportation infrastructure improvements, which is where you would see the outcomes in that. And the county has been using that data as well to prioritize some transportation improvements. So certainly the decision makers are aware of that and use it in their process for prioritizing transportation improvements, as well as maybe some other improvements within the county. Thanks.
Thank you, Wade. So there was another question that came in that talked about the utilities and there being a date for the utilities. Again, one individual here actually made a statement about Commissioner Merman bringing those utilities down. So we'll find out some information. Well, not Commissioner Merman, but the Public Utilities Department, Commissioner Merman being a champion of it. So we'll actually reach out to the Utilities Department and we'll find out a little bit more information on that and make sure that that's reflected in the website, project website. And that may be it, unless I missed something. Terry, do you have any other hands up right now?
No hands up.
Okay, all right. I don't think I see any other questions that we haven't already covered. Mary Ann, Bob, anything to say?
We just appreciate everybody that stayed with us for the last 90 minutes, or I guess hour right now.
Yeah, thank you all for sitting through, an hour of talking about heavy data and what we can do with it in the community. Of course, there's still time, a little bit more time if anyone wants to raise their hand and make any other comments or have any other questions, feel free to do so. While we wrap up here, we will keep monitoring that. Oh, I see there's a hand raised, Terry. If you could unmute Raj.
Raj is self-muted.
Okay, Raj, if you could unmute yourself.
Basically, when the date, you just mentioned Commissioner have some plan to bring utilities, right? So that plan or whatever the information, background information or comprehensive plan to specific that when the data will be, you just mentioned that you're going to check with them, right? So how soon we will know the plan for utilities, bringing utilities to a particular area?
So again, I would like to mention that one of the attendees mentioned Commissioner Merman. So again, this is your community talking amongst itself in the question and in the chat. So we will reach out to the Utilities Department and we'll find out what they do have programmed for the area, and we'll be able to provide that on the website. So again, I don't know if there is a utility plan that's going through or not. You guys have mentioned it, but I don't personally know about it outside of what is within the report that is the CIP issue. So we'll see if perhaps that is what we're talking about, what's already in the CIP, or if there is something outside of that.
Yeah, basically, I already sent a mail to Marian on this perspective, but unfortunately, we're not able to get any information. So is there any way that somebody can help us to get the information, what the commissioner or the utility department, the plans for the next few years, something like that?
Yeah, Raj, you and I had been emailing back and forth, and I was trying to get that information for you. Unfortunately, I was not able to get that information when I was seeking it out. So I'll certainly follow back with them and try my hardest to hound down that information for you. And all of the comments here and all of the questions, as you had mentioned, will be added to our website. But I will personally reach out to you and email you about that because I know you and I have been trying to figure that out for some while.
Oh, thank you, Marian. I really appreciate your time and effort on this part. I know you were trying, you know, so if you can
I'm sorry. I will certainly keep trying.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and Jay, I see a few more questions, a couple more have rolled in.
Well, let me see if I can get myself to those. Marianne, if you see one, because I'm looking at the ones I've already read, so if you see one, by all means, please go for it.
So I see, let's see, there's a question that states, how can we access a programming report or plan for Gibsonton outside of this fact report? So as we stated in the beginning of the meeting, so the Board of County Commissioners has asked us to do this profile now, which again is kind of a data gathering profile rather than an update to the community plan. Gibsonton does have a community plan, but we have not been tasked with opening that up and updating it yet at this time. So if you're talking about programming report from, you know, a community planning standpoint, I would start with a community plan. But in regards to utilities and infrastructure, the map that was shown earlier for the capital improvements that the county has planned is a good place to start as well. That you can Google that capital improvements viewer for the Hillsborough County, and that should come up. You can see all the projects going on in the county and click on the details for that. If you'd like for me to send that link to you directly, please contact me and I will I'll get you that link if that's in fact what you were talking about in regards to a programming report. So the next question I see is county should focus on Gibsonton improvements, which is easy to bring rather than far in the county, which is more expensive. So I think that comment is referring to focusing on improvements here rather than areas maybe outside of the urban service area. And that is certainly a good comment. And I think that from what I've heard, there is agreement with that. Certainly that there should be some focus on improvements within the urban service area boundary first. And then the last question I see here is, do you believe you will be tasked with updating the community plan? So that's anyone's guess, but that is up to the Board of County Commissioners to decide. And so, if they choose to, if that is something that the community comes forward and requests from the board, that is something they'd like to see, then maybe they would be maybe they would be more inclined to do so at this time. I do not know personally, and Jay, maybe you have more insight, but I do not know that there is a whispers of tasking us with that in the near future. I could be wrong, but Jay, maybe you can chime in a little bit on that one as well.
Yeah, you're correct, Marianne. The only community plan currently being updated in the county is Waimama. We have not heard about updating Gibsonton or Baum or any of the other ones that we are currently working within those communities, but not on their community.
Right. Okay.
So I do see here, what is the next step after taking this report? I'm sorry, Marianne, I was just going to say I did see that Catherine again asked for what is the next step for the report, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that possibly in front of the Planning Commission here in another month or two. Yes.
So thanks. So the next step is that we will be taking this to the elected officials and briefing them on what we have found. And so we don't have dates selected yet for that, but of course, everything there, you can always check the project webpage for the most updated info, and we will certainly send out updates to the constant contact email list that we have when those dates are determined. Okay, so
And I don't see any other questions that pop up right now. Anything else that you guys can see?
I don't see any other questions now. I just want to reiterate the fact that all of the Q&A portion will be transcribed and put on the website, so you can go back and reference the question and answer portion of this. And there'll be a PDF put up on our site, so you can go refer back to that. There's also going to be a recording of this if you feel like you need to rewind and watch a part, if you feel like you missed something. And the draft report is also available on the project webpage if you want to spend some more time with it. Other than that, again, if you have any other questions or comments, until next time, my email is right here, marianna@plancom.org. And we're here to answer any questions. Give us a call or email us if there's anything else that comes up. So thank you all again for hanging with us, and we really appreciate your attendance here and all of the wonderful questions. Thank you.